Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode. Now, I'm your host, Luke Jones, and today I'm joined by Mark Adam Snell. Now, Mark and I trained together at the Coaching Masters. This is where we got our coaching accreditation. So I know firsthand of his real, honest story from growing up feeling different and facing big challenges to battling addiction and now helping other coaches through NLP, hypnosis, and Reiki. Mark's journey is truly powerful. Mark, thanks for being here. So let's dive in. How are you doing today, mate?
I'm doing all right, Luke. Yes, I'm okay. It's Sunday morning. It's 10 o'clock and I've had my little morning routine. So I'm second cup of coffee. So, as good as I'll be and ready to go. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, Mark, can you share a bit about who you are, please, and what you do for people who don't know who you are like I do?
Yeah. So my name's Mark and a bit about me. So I live in a place called Chester in the northwest UK. Previously lived in Manchester for 10 years and then moved over here because I met my partner on Facebook of all places. And, the rest is history, as they say. In terms of what I do, so I first qualified in NLP and hypnotherapy. And I just want to say hypnotherapy, so not hypnosis. So, unfortunately, I'm not yet trained to be able to do stage hypnosis shows and make people bark like dogs on stage. Maybe one day. So I trained in hypnotherapy back then. And then as Luke already previously said, we met at the Coaching Masters. I started working with the Coaching Masters back in 21 when I started working with them. And then I qualified as a coach. I did some more NLP training. And then I did my NLP trainers training in 2023 as well. So that's a bit about me. As we'll probably find out a little bit later on, I always introduce myself as well by saying, Mark, I'm an addict, because I like to surrender to that fact every day. But, just for today, I'm an addict in recovery as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yes, I remember doing my NLP Masters Practitioner course with the Coaching Masters. That was an amazing course for 6 months. And
Yes.
I remember one of the sessions you facilitated it. So how has NLP helped you in your journey, would you say, Mark?
How has it helped me in my journey? Gosh, it's helped me quite a lot, to be honest with you. I mean, I would say the biggest thing that NLP has really helped me with is overcoming the fear of public speaking, because, a lot of people see me on social media now and they think, oh my God, this guy's got a lot of confidence, he just doesn't care, he shows up as himself and he speaks authentically. But it wasn't always like that. I had a huge fear of public speaking. And when I, was a student with the Coaching Masters, I would hide in the background on the Zoom call. My camera would be off. My heart would be racing if anybody asked me to talk, literally shaking, sweating. And with NLP, one of the big things that helped me was timeline therapy, which actually took me back to where the fear of public speaking first occurred. And I was able to then, look at that particular instance, which is strangely enough, my unconscious mind took me back to when I peed my pants in nursery and everyone was laughing at me. So young Mark then had learned that people are going to laugh at me if I'm myself, there was other contributing factors to that part, but that's where my mind took me back to. And, I took the learnings from that and, gave that younger version of me a little bit of love and a little bit of care. And then I came back to the present, and that really, really helped me, as well as something which we use in NLP called submodality change, which is the way that we code our memories and changing around like the finer parts of our memories to take away the emotional charge. And I would say those two NLP techniques really, really helped me when I stood up and did my presentation in my NLP trainers training. I had to present to a room full of people on two subjects of NLP. So yeah, it's helped me in a lot of ways, and it helps me to, I wouldn't say be in control of my state, because I like to sit with my emotions nowadays and feel them. But there are techniques within NLP that can, help you turn on confidence and help you turn on helpful emotions in the moment when you need to feel them.
Yeah, there's so many tools and techniques of NLP. It's such a vast thing. Like I said, it was a 6-month program and could be quite overwhelming at times, but you can take all those golden nuggets and all the tools and techniques for yourself and you can obviously use them in everyday life. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
It
So,
really is. It is fascinating stuff, and I like to refer to NLP as it is because when people say to me, "What is NLP?" I don't know about you, Lou,
such a
but
broad
sometimes
question, I know.
because it's so broad, it's very difficult to explain, and I like to explain it as a toolbox full of techniques that you can literally just dive into for various different aspects of your life because the subject is so broad.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, everybody's different. Everyone's upbringing is different. Everyone's perspective's different. So yeah, some things are relatable and some things aren't.
Yeah, definitely.
Looking back then, Mark, what was life like for you growing up, especially in the context of family and community? And were there any moments that you felt like you had to hide parts of yourself?
100%. Yeah. So what was life like for me growing up? So, my mum had me at a very young age, bless her. And I lived with my nan. My mum lived around the corner. And being a kid, I always one thing that that's always stuck out to me, and I've heard other people share this as well, is that I did always feel different growing up. Um, I was quite a big kid, I'm yeah, I'm an addict in lots of different ways, and I can see that back then I was still an addict in a lot of ways because I was the type of boy that would, eat 5 or 6 chocolate bars in one go and destroy the evidence so no one could find it. I'd eat a full packet of biscuits at night time dipped in my tea. I always wanted more. And I was quite a big kid. I was the fat kid in school. And I felt different because of that, certainly in primary school. But I had a loving family. I really did. I had a loving family. My nan spoilt me with love as well, as nans do. And I realized at the age of 13 that I was gay. And in a way, compared to some other people's story, I was quite lucky because, my mum knew at a very young age. And, my mum was, she was really accepting. She just said, "You're not telling me anything I don't already know. You're my son, for God's sake." Do you know what I mean? And when I look back at pictures of me from being a kid, I mean, you can tell, like you can really tell. But, I felt different. I did. And, part of me at that age was like, why am I not like everybody else? Which added to the, the feelings of, of being different. And I always remember I went out with a girl when I was 13, 14 because I was like, she fancied me, I used to kiss her on break and stuff like that. And it just felt wrong. I went to the cinemas with her to go and watch a film and, she was holding my hand and I'm thinking, what am I doing? Do you know what I mean? This is not right. This is not me. I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm not attracted to her in any way, shape or form, because and I felt different. And the way it sort of shaped me is that I took on a belief from a very young age, especially around men, that I need to act different to fit in. I need to appear a bit more manly. I need to, act like myself because I'm not going to be accepted if I act like myself. I'm going to be rejected. So I quickly learned how to wear masks, at that very young age, and that's been a theme through a lot of my life. Really, is wearing masks and not always being my true self and sometimes performing in a lot of ways too, because deep down inside there's somebody inside that feels like, well, if I don't act differently and I don't perform, I'm going to get rejected, and I know that that's still there, and I'll admit that that is something that I'm working through now, and recently I've worked through that a lot and it's been very freeing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying there about obviously archetypes, wearing masks, because we all do it anyway. And again, going back to NLP, that's something that was a really interesting module that I think is towards the end of the coaching masters. master practitioner course, but it's absolutely fascinating how we do wear all these different masks. Of course, whether we're at work in our careers, whether we're with our family, we all do it anyway. But being your true, real, authentic self is such a hard thing. And I can only imagine what it must have been like for you growing up, Mark. Really, 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 really tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tough in a lot of ways like that, and in other ways, I did have it, I had it, I had it easier than others.
Because of
But
your mum, like you said.
yeah,
Yeah.
because of my mum, and, my nan and granddad came round and stuff like that as well. They were fine sort of after a while. And, I didn't have many friends, so to speak, many close friends. I did have a really good close friend, she's still my best friend now, but I started going out clubbing in Manchester at a very young age. Like, oh my god, when I look back now, I was wild in a lot of respect. I used to jump the train to Manchester at the age of 15. And I was going clubbing. I was getting into clubs at that age because I always looked older. And that's where things, obviously started to really change for me at that point, because of all the things that are involved with going into clubs till 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate to that. I was a raver back in the day.
Yeah,
Growing up in the 90s as well,
yeah,
I think the 90s have a lot to answer for, really. There was a big club scene back
yeah.
then, and it was really up and coming, wasn't it?
God.
One thing I want to touch on as well, Mark, you said that you've had a very addictive personality, and that began with chocolate and sweets and
Yeah,
food and binging, and I can relate to that as well. Have you
yeah.
ever been diagnosed with ADHD?
I haven't been diagnosed with ADHD,
Okay.
but my family, there's a lot of ADHD.
Yeah.
In my family, my little brother, for example, has got quite severe ADHD as well, and I look at the traits in me, and I do see the traits in me a hell of a lot, but I've never been down the route of an official diagnosis. I've done the tests online and it's come back and it's recommended me to actually go down the route of doing that, but it's just something that I haven't yet pursued. Maybe I might do in the future. I'm not too sure on that one yet.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same with me. So my son he's 15 years old now, and we're waiting for him to be diagnosed. But I can see so much of myself in him, so I'm
Mhm.
sure I'm sure I've got it. But again, like yourself, I've never been diagnosed. But so from what you're saying, Mark, those early experiences, how did they shape and transition into your relationship with alcohol and drugs?
So how did they shape and transition it? So, the first time I started, I went out clubbing. I was very nervous, because it's almost like, oh my God, all these people there. And I remember looking at these people thinking, how the hell are they dancing? And it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm sat here and I'm knackered. How are they dancing all night? And then it started out with an E, and the pill kicked in and I was like, "Oh my god," like, wow, I just felt such an empathy for everybody. I was chatting to everybody and I thought, "Oh my god," like confidence, actual confidence without all that chattering in my head going off, all that negative self-talk going off, wow. And I just had so much confidence, and that is the trap of, any form of drug because it gives you the confidence. And for a lot of people, that's like, wow, that's the beginning of being sucked into the vortex that is the disease of addiction.
Yeah,
For me, it sort of it started that way, and that sort of shapes everything because that confidence, I wanted more of it. And with addiction being I call it a disease of wanting more all the time. Of course, you're going to want more. I want more confidence. I want more drugs. I want more biscuits. I want more of everything. So that's how it sort of shaped it, really. From there, really. And then, obviously, I ended up moving across to Manchester after having I had a relationship that took me over to Manchester. I ended up moving over there, and then I ended up going out more frequently. Canal Street in Manchester, clubs open every night. And it started, 2 or 3 times a week. And then I got involved in ketamine, and then I got involved in speed. And, it, addiction is progressive, it gets worse, it's a progressive illness. It doesn't slow down. It just continues until your life's completely unmanageable. And, it went on further from there.
Yeah, you've been so
Yeah.
open about your struggles with addiction, Mark.
Yeah.
Was there a particular rock bottom moment, or did it? I mean, you said that it progressed slowly,
Yeah.
but was there a particular moment that stands out to you?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
So when things got really bad, it was when, the drug use became daily. So it was like waking up in the morning at 9 o'clock, to a line of ketamine, and then, in a spliff, at 9 o'clock in the morning. And one thing that started to happen in my social circle at the time is that everyone was injecting speed.
Wow.
The
Okay.
majority of people were injecting speed. And I'd always been scared of needles. I was like, God, I could never do that to myself. I would never put a needle in my arm. But when, and this is the thing, when things, we can say to ourselves, we're never going to do something. But when something becomes socially acceptable in your circle, you will be surprised at what you do. And obviously, curiosity killed the cat. And, when I ended up injecting speed, and that just turned my addiction into not only an addiction for drugs, but also an addiction for sex as well, and putting myself into some really risky situations, which lowered my self-worth, even more than what it was already. So that was the start of the rock bottom. And then I lost my flat, so I didn't have anywhere to live. I ended up being in a tent on my friend's back garden. All the money went on drugs. I was working in and out of the sex industry at the time, because it's like, how else do you get the money to fund it? If you haven't got anything left to sell, the only thing I had left to sell as a gay man was my body. Do you know what I mean? Because there was nothing else. And I needed to get that, that money to go out, to get the drugs, to use. And obviously we couldn't eat at the time. The money didn't go on food. So we used to go skipping. Some people call it freeganism. Some people do it without addictions, because in a way it is saving things from going into landfill. But we used to go to co-op skips at night time, and we used to have a suitcase on wheels. I used to have a bandana on and a bike. And we used to empty the skips out, and we used to take the food out of the skips. And, and obviously I went to my family, and I'd not stole off the family, but I'd borrowed a lot of money. I'd asked my nan to lend me money all the time, for obviously it wasn't for food, it was for drugs. And, my family couldn't help me. And, I ended up getting a flat, and I was still using when I got the flat. And, I had a dirty hit one night, which is when bacteria from a needle goes straight into your bloodstream, and every single bone and muscle in your body is throbbing. And I was pouring with sweat, because obviously your immune system is trying to get rid of this bacteria in your bloodstream. And I laid in the bath, and I pressed 999 on the phone and left the phone at the side of me. And I thought, if I start to die, I can press the green button, it will ring an ambulance, and someone will track me down and find out where I am. And after that, I had a friend who was in recovery, and that was my rock bottom, there. That was right, okay. That was the first rock bottom. I have had another rock bottom after that, because, well, I've had numerous rock bottoms after that, but that was the first one.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's very interesting what you said there about how the people you surround yourself with, we're tribal creatures. I always say this, and you can't relate when you see these people, whether they're injecting, whether they're homeless, whether they're on the street, and you can't relate to them, but it can creep in, and then you can, before you know it, and it can happen so fast as well. I've heard from so many other addicts the same, how you can, if you get involved, with these sorts of people, before you know it, you can be injecting drugs. It's unbelievable, really.
It really is. It really is, and I look back and I just think, how, but the deeper down your self-worth goes, the less you care about yourself, and the less you care about yourself, the more likely you are to do these things, because you just think, well, I feel worthless inside, so I may as well just it's self-harm in a way. It is. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, and you're self-medicating as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot
absolutely.
going on there. In terms of time scale then, Mark, how long would you say it took you to get there from when you first started going out drinking, clubbing, et cetera, if you don't mind me asking?
The age of 15 was when, 14, 15. I'd had a spliff at 14, I'd had cannabis, it's still a drug at the end of the day. And drunk a lot of alcohol. But when, it was 15 probably when I first started the drugs. And then 12 years ago was when I hit rock bottom. I'm 39 now, so I would have been 27. That initial rock bottom there, yeah,
27. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So you spoke a bit about there about admitting to yourself that you did need help. What was the hardest part of that, and when did you finally reach out to someone?
So I found a friend who was, he was in recovery at the time. He was in a 12-step fellowship at the time. And he was like, I've turned my life around and everything like that. And I then went down the route of trying different things. I was with a recovery service in Stockport, and I did acupuncture on the ears, and I went to meet with somebody every week and stuff. And the compulsion to use was just so intense that I would go to these sessions and I would be lying to the person in there, telling them that I wasn't using, and I still was using. I was lying to myself. And I did a few meetings back then, at the fellowship that I was going to, and I got off my drug of choice at the time, which was, as I said, which was speed. And I had all these people around me in the fellowship saying, but it's not about the drug that you're on; it's about you being an addict. And if you're an addict, it's not safe to use any substance. And I was like, I wasn't open-minded at the time. I wasn't open-minded at all. I was very, very, very stubborn. And, my friend had just booked an all-inclusive holiday to Torremolinos. And I was like, oh, I'm not. I went on the holiday, and then I was like, right, no, I'm not going back to that fellowship, because, I don't believe what they're saying. Addiction isn't a disease or an illness. I've got off my drug of choice now. I'm safe to go out there and drink. And I went on that 10-day holiday, and I drank every night, snorted coke while I was over there. Yeah, I thought I'm like, I've recovered, I don't believe what they're saying about you're always recovering, and you're always susceptible to relapse and everything. And
You
I
could moderate.
that I could moderate, yes, those justifications that this disease makes us think, like, oh, we can moderate it, we're
The
in
moderation
control.
trap. Yeah.
All that stuff that drains our energy, the amount of times, and what sort of happened since then, Luke, is that obviously I came out of addiction. I met Tony, who, I've been with Tony now for 10 years, and, I love him, he's a great guy. And I moved over to Chester, and I thought, I've moved over to Chester, as we do. We tell ourselves, if we just move, we get into a new relationship and everything's going to be okay. We're not susceptible to addiction anymore. And, every single year that since 12 years ago, since, stopping the drug of choice, I've always gone back to either weed. And I'd buy weed, and I'd be telling myself, right, I'm buying cannabis because it can help me sleep, and I'll smoke it 3 times a week. And then quickly, what happens is I'm smoking it every night, and I've got butterflies when I'm in work, because I can't wait to get home from work, because all my mind is going is, oh my God, I want that bong in my hand. And as soon as I get in, it's like, oh God, thank God. and then all weekend smoking the cannabis. And I feel like for the last 10 years, all I've done is be withdrawing from some sort of substance. And even with alcohol, I have always been the type of person that I never drank alcohol for the taste. I'm not interested in 3 to 4% cans. Like, to me, that I used to turn around and say, why do I want a 3 to 4% can? I'm not putting those calories in me for like low returns.
Yeah.
So I
Empty
used to want,
calories.
yeah. So I used to want like the black cans at 9%. Do you know what I mean? Uh, I think one of them's called Karpaki, the Polish one. And I would go out and buy 3 or 4 cans of them, and I'd neck them. And I found that I was just, my partner would come round on a Saturday and I'd drink one with him, and then I'd have 2 more hidden at the back of the fridge, and I'd be cooking in the kitchen and I'd be downing them and getting rid of the cans and hiding it in the bottom of the bin. And I just thought, the amount of times that I would drink and I'd go out on nights out with people, and I was always that guy that would lose his phone throwing up on people's sofas on a pure white sofa, which was highly embarrassing, as you can imagine. Losing my keys, losing my money. I hit another rock bottom. Well, I wouldn't say it was a rock bottom, because I've been at rock bottom before. I saw where things were going. And ever since I qualified as an NLP trainer and everything, and I've used and drank on and off since then. And not so long ago, I realized that this was getting a problem again. I was drinking all the time. I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. And there was one day where I was just like, I'd been up all night. Tony was coming round the next day and he was going, why are you so tired? And I was lying to him. I was saying, I just had a really shit sleep last night, but really I've downed like 10 cans on my own. And I'd been up all night, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I just burst out crying. And I thought that was my moment of surrender, because I was like, I can't do this on my own. And that is the key. It's when we're prepared to I'm fed up of all these bullshit excuses I'm making to myself and these lies. I'm fed up of justifying this addiction. I'm fed up of saying that I can moderate, because it doesn't matter what drug I use. History has told me I can't moderate, and alcohol is still a drug, and I can't moderate any drug. And that was my moment of surrender. And, I went on to, there are many, I just want to make this clear that there are many route to recovery, but the route to recovery that I chose was a 12-step fellowship. And I went on to an online meeting, and I cried all the way through that meeting, because that was me putting my hands up and that was my step one. That was me saying to myself, I surrender.
Yeah.
My life's become unmanageable and I need help.
Wow. So powerful. Was that recently, Mark? Because
That was recently.
it was
Yeah,
recently, because I
that
know
was.
that you still attend your meetings and stuff as well.
That's correct. Yeah. So that was, in fact, I'm just going to check on my phone now on my
Okay.
on my clean time countdown. That was 40 as of the recording of this. That was 43 days ago, 3 hours and 43 minutes ago.
Wow. Wow. Brilliant. Yeah. What I find coaching men is the biggest hurdle is that ego. It's that surrender. It's being vulnerable. And with yourself, Mark, as well, in your story, and being different from such a young age as well, it still took you all of that time to surrender, to finally be so open. And yeah, this is the biggest problem that I find with men. I know women are obviously gonna find it hard as well, but just trying to convince men to let go of that ego and surrender is such a hard job.
It is. No, I completely agree, Luke. It is, just thinking about it now, if I had have completely surrendered when I had the opportunity 12 years ago, I would have, it would have been a lot easier, wouldn't it? And it's, we don't want to admit defeat, do we? We don't want to admit defeat. And actually, because we believe that when we admit that we're powerless over our addictions, we think it's saying that we're powerless and we're weak, and it's not. It's the opposite. Because when we are in addiction and we're justifying our reasons for using, and we're lying to ourselves about being able to moderate our use, that's leaking our power out, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Admitting that you're powerless and surrendering is actually you going, I'm claiming my power back by admitting I need help, and you don't have to justify the using anymore. And you can go, yeah, I'm not in control. So just for today, I'm not going to use.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the stories we tell ourselves. I say it all the time. I bang on about it all the time in my content. We tell us, we tell ourselves so many lies. And yeah, when you finally let go, it's it's freedom. And people say to me still about it being boring, that you feel like you're missing out. And I'm like, wow, I said, it's one of those unteachable lessons. You can't tell people, you can't try and convince them. I find it so hard to not be so self-righteous and bang my drum and go on and people. But it's one of those things. It's about stepping out. I love the analogy of stepping out of the jar so you can read the label. But it's only when you step back and you can zoom in, you can like, oh my God, wow, I've been stuck on autopilot on these unhealthy habit loops for decades.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's just so freeing when you finally have that realization.
it is massively freeing, massively, massively freeing. It is. It's almost like, oh God, it's almost like relief, isn't it? Really. I
It
don't need
is.
to play these games with myself anymore and keep lying to myself. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, exactly. So through NLP, through hypnosis, through Reiki as well, how have you drew on all of these things in your own recovery and your own transformation?
My own transformation. Yeah. So I would say, so first of all, I'm going to actually say about Reiki. So, I love energy work. I love Reiki, and, it's helped me in so many ways. And, throughout these last 46 days, I'm able to give myself a lot more Reiki. And it's, along with meditation, every single day for the last 46 days, I have kept a consistent morning routine of prayer, meditation, and every single day. And then I'll do Reiki as well, on the mornings that I can do the Reiki, I will do the Reiki as well. And that just brings me to center. It just calms me. It keeps my energy field strong in a lot of ways. And, with hypnosis, even though, I have used hypnotherapy on myself for addictions before in the past, and I found that, yeah, it's helped me to get some clean time, but it hasn't really kept me there, even though hypnotherapy is powerful in a lot of ways. And for some people, it probably works amazingly for addictions. But with me, the disease will always resurface in some other way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But hypnotherapy still helps me in so many ways. It helps me relax. It's really helped me with sleep in a lot of ways. So yeah, they're just all tools that we can go back to whenever we want to, aren't they, really? So yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to dig into Reiki. So for someone that knows nothing about it, I know a little bit about it through obviously doing NLP, and I know a lot of other coaches that use it. Can
Mhm.
you just explain it, please, Mark, please, for someone who doesn't know anything about it?
About Reiki, yes, of
Yes,
course
please.
I can. So Reiki stands for Universal Life Force Energy. And its first originated in Japan. Okay.
Okay.
So it was a guy called Dr. Mikao Usui, who was like a Buddhist student, and had a spiritual awakening, and Reiki was originally kept secret in Japan. And well, when I first discovered Reiki, and the person who first gave it me, when she told me about Reiki, I thought, God, she's off her head. You know what I mean? Like
As
she's
we
mad.
do. Yeah.
You know, she said, I put my hands on you, and I'm a channel for this energy, and I don't control where it goes, but I allow myself to be a channel, and the energy flows through me, and it goes to where it's needed within you to balance you on a mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual level. It doesn't heal you, but it helps put you back into balance so your body can start to heal itself. And I was like, okay, all right, love. And when I first had a Reiki session from her, I cried because, there's 12 hand positions. And when she put her hands over my heart center, I had to open my eyes, Lou, because her hands went from being warm to as hot as a kettle. And it felt like her hands were sinking into my chest. And I don't cry in front of people. And I burst out crying, and I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed like a baby. all these tears came out.
Wow.
And I slept for like 24 hours after having that Reiki session. And I felt what Reiki was then, and I was like, wow, this shit's actually real. And I then did my level Reiki 1 and 2. And then I went on to do angelic Reiki as well, which is, a similar sort of energy, but it's more, how can I put this? It's more working with spirit.
Okay. It's a bit deeper.
It's a lot deeper. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a bit more refined. And yeah, it's just great, and I've never really done Reiki professionally. It's been more mainly for self-treatment and when friends have requested a treatment, and things like that as well.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating, but it goes back to the ego again, doesn't it? It's trying to explain to people about these tools and techniques without getting laughed at, and it's so tough for people to sort of let go and just be curious.
Yeah.
I go on about being curious all the time, and my wife just laughs at me. But I think it's so important to be open minded for these.
Yes.
Would you agree, Mike?
Of course, it is. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Definitely. Being open-mindedness is, it's something that I've learned to do more of, in recovery because it's a spiritual principle that, can serve a lot of people well by being open-minded, and even if something doesn't feel right or you don't agree with it, that's okay. But you can learn so much about yourself and about other people by just being open minded and going, do you know what? I might not believe it, but let me give it a try. And then I can come to my own conclusions.
Yeah. It's a good way of looking at it. Because we're only gonna believe something when we've got some evidence, and we can look at so many things and think, well, it might work for them, but it's not going to work for me. But it's about giving it a go and
Of
just
course.
trying to be open minded. I always say to people, be curious, be open minded. When we're children and we're young and we're free, you're so open minded, aren't you? It's a big world out there, and you've got so much hope and yeah, it's about reverting to that childlike mindset. I say being curious and being open minded.
Definitely.
Is there any practical techniques for anyone listening, Mark, who might be stuck in their own heads through all the tools and techniques and stuff that you teach and what you've learned throughout your own journey?
But for people that are stuck inside their own heads, I would say one thing that, helps me, and I've practiced it on and off for a long time. And, and this is not, I mean, I'll give you another tool related to NLP afterwards, but I just think it's worth mentioning gratitude.
Yeah, massive.
50%. So, in recovery now, I've got a sponsor, which is somebody that, I adore. I speak to her every single day. I can sort of turn to her for anything. And she's helping me go through the 12 steps of recovery, which is great. She's guiding me through. But one task that she set me was to be consistent with gratitude. And I've practiced gratitude on and off, but I haven't really been consistent with it. But the past 46 days I have every day. And that gets me out of my head first thing in the morning because I'm able to write down 5 things I'm grateful for, but not just 5 things I'm grateful for, the reason why I'm grateful for them. So that
Interesting.
might look like I'm really, really grateful for the new connection that I've got with people now I'm in recovery because I'm able to chat to people more. I'm able to listen to people more. So you're giving a reason why by putting because. And then what I'll do is I'll read it back to myself with my hands on my heart and I'll say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll really feel the gratitude, not just say it, not just give it lip service, but actually feel the emotion of gratitude, which is what I found is a really has been a gift of recovery to be able to actually feel gratitude now. Whereas before I never really felt emotions because I was always either using or recovering. So that gets me out of my head straight away, almost instantly. And I would also say, in terms of the NLP techniques to get you out of your head, I would say the NLP techniques are more sort of like reprogramming and going into the mind. So I would say another one to get somebody out of the head, I would say, would be meditation. And When people hear meditation, and this goes back to the open-mindedness, you need to be open-minded, because a lot of people will go, God, I'm not sitting there for like 20 minutes or half an hour, just like listening
Yeah.
to my breath. I can't do that.
Yeah. I'm no monk. That's what I get a lot.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be that, I started out with 5 minutes of meditation a day, and now it's gone to 15 minutes. But start out with just listening to a mindfulness meditation for 5 minutes on YouTube. And not only does that get you out of your own head, but it also trains you to be mindful as a natural state. So eventually you get to the point where you are out of your head a lot more throughout the day, not just when you're doing the meditation. It's the long-term effects. But, with meditation, because it doesn't give instant gratification, a lot of people are like, oh, I've tried it once or twice, I can't be bothered. It's better to do 5 minutes a day than to do half an hour twice a week.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I always say to people is that it's the whole delayed gratification. In this day and age, we just want that quick fix with,
Of course.
with phones and everything else. And if it doesn't work after just trying it even a few times, if you can be disciplined enough to try it a few times, but you've really got to sit with it for weeks and months. It's like going to the gym. It's like anything. You've really, really got to put the work in. And meditation has been transformational for me. I don't react to stuff anymore. I respond. I can
Yes.
be calm. You take things in your stride. Don't get me wrong. Life's still tough. Life's still really hard. You're going to get a lot of shit come at you. That's life. But you can, when you're not going through, when you're not using substances and you're not in that fight or flight mode all the time, what a difference. It's just a massive, massive difference.
100%. Yeah, definitely, Luke. I would say there's a huge difference there. And I think a key thing that you've said there as well, which is great, is responding rather than reacting. And, that's something that I realized yesterday. I was in a conversation with somebody, and this person had said something, and I realized that this would have triggered me at one point, and I would have been arguing, and I would have been like, like, no, 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 trying to change their opinion. No, it's not this way. And I just actually sat there and I went, I respect your opinion, but I disagree, and that's okay. You know, and that was great. And I sat there afterwards and I thought to myself, I wouldn't have reacted like that. I don't know whether it's the consistent meditation or whether it's just because I'm in recovery and I've had some time away from, the drugs and the distractions. I don't know. Maybe that is, as you said, if that's a gift that you've got, Luke, from meditation, then maybe that's the reason why. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's brilliant stuff. You've mentioned community quite a few times, Mark, as well. And before we talk about community, I want to say about prayer as well, because I know with AA, it gets a lot of negative press because of the religious side of it. But it hasn't got to be to God. It can be to the higher power. It can be to the universe as well. And I know that so many people that has helped. But yeah, that community side of it, whether that's family, the supported spaces, the recovery groups, I mean, that plays such a big part in your growth, doesn't it? And your recovery.
Yes, it certainly does 100%. What I've got from being in recovery is I have just on what you said initially there, I have a relationship with my higher power. And that's just my view on it, is that that I have a higher power, and I'm not religious, but I would class myself as spiritual. And I refer to my higher power as the angels.
Mm,
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
But that's me.
Yeah,
Some people
exactly.
might,
Everyone's different. Yeah.
some people might not. Some people might not have an higher power as a spiritual being, which is great. That diversity I've found is welcome in the 12-step fellowship that I go to. But the community for me has been amazing, because the disease of addiction is very, very, very cunning, because it wants us to stay in isolation.
Yeah. Yeah. That is it, mate. That is exactly
Yeah,
it. Yeah. So when we can go into these groups, we can, and it's just hearing those stories. It's
yeah,
like it's like these podcasts. Going back a couple of years when I started to listen to podcasts on sobriety, I used to hear these stories and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm not the only one, because you catastrophize everything in your head, don't you? You really think it's just you. And so many other people have gone through the same crap, similar crap to what you have. So when you get into these meetings and all these different people from all different walks of life start sharing their story, and it's not, it could be so many different people, all different ages, all
Mhm.
different careers, all different sexes. It could be everyone. And this, and it's so relatable. And that community is absolutely massive.
It is. It is. It's amazing. It really is in a lot of ways for me because like you said there, Luke. My experience has been that I've heard so many different people, and I've not felt alone. And that disease of addiction hates that. It does. It hates it. It doesn't want us to be connected. It wants us to feel different. It wants us to feel like we're the only ones. It wants us to feel isolated because what happens when we feel like that? We want to numb the feelings we want to use. And one really good thing it's done for me is not only helping me overcome addiction, but I would say be on the journey of recovery, not overcome addiction, but be on the journey. It's helped me to gain my confidence back. And I'll tell you why. I went to a meeting and there was 14 men in this meeting. Now, they were all they were all straight blokes and I felt I was a bit like, oh my God, this is triggering me because I need to act a bit more masculine. I don't want people to know that I'm gay. I'm going to get rejected, all that stuff I was talking about earlier. And I sat there and I listened, and there was a main sharer, and this particular person spoke about how they felt very different when they were growing up. They felt like they just wanted to fit in and be accepted, and they had to wear a lot of masks. And this person was, well, you shouldn't assume, but I was assuming, was slightly different to me. And I sat there and I had one of those spiritual awakenings, and I thought, do you know what? I thought we're all very, very, very similar, regardless of, race, religion, sexuality, we're all very similar. And that gave me permission then to be myself fully. I
Yeah.
thought, wow, I don't need to wear these masks anymore. It's an illusion. I don't need to, I can be me. And I think it's also being comfortable with the fact that not everyone is going to like us, and that's okay, because, and that doesn't mean anything about us. But the community aspect has just helped so much. It really has. I mean, I've met so many people that that I message every day. I mean, I had good friends anyway. Before that, I know quite a few people that are really good associates. But I've met some people in recovery that I talk to them daily. They check in on me in the morning. I check in on them. That I'm completely honest with, and it's taught me to be honest, speaking honestly and sharing honestly. Because let's face it, the first time we start talking about our feelings, and men have this a lot, we're not used to talking about our feelings. We just pushed them down for so many years. So it's getting honest and getting real and really talking about our feelings. It's not easy, it's not easy, but people not judging you for your feelings and having that community aspect. Addiction hates that. It hates it. It hates it.
It
It
does.
does.
Yeah.
So,
It's all
yeah, it's
about
helped me.
listening. It's all about listening for the similarities, not the differences.
Yes, this is it, Lou. Yeah, this is it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So many of the dads and blokes that I work with, Mark, they struggle with confidence, like you just said, especially with speaking up. So, is there any advice for someone who feels silenced and afraid to be seen and open up?
So if you're afraid to be seen and open up, the advice that I would give you, first of all, about opening up is, some people would just say, face the fear immediately, to overcome it. Now, I would say, first of all, before, that is a big part of it, is facing the fear and opening up and being seen. So let's say it's in the context of somebody like going live on social media or posting a video on social media or something like that. Let's say that absolutely petrifies them. I would say, first of all, before you do that, learn to regulate your nervous system, and you can do that in a number of different ways. So you can do that by doing something called 4-7-8 breathing.
Yeah.
That's my favorite way, which is literally when you just breathe in for 4, hold the breath for 7, and then breathe out for 8. Okay. And then to the count of 8, and do that 4 or 5 times. And that sends a very, very strong message to the nervous system that you are safe. Okay. Your
Calms you down.
heart is still going to race when you face the fear of being seen. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that you're going to go in there like a Buddhist monk. Your heart is still going to race, but that's okay, because we think when we're in that state and our heart is racing that people are going to tell that we're nervous. People can't tell most of the time. And, the more you actually just push through that fear when you've calmed yourself down to start with, the more you are training yourself that actually it's okay for me to do this. And, what I would highly recommend is that if somebody is afraid of being seen, let's say that you've got like a big talk coming up for whatever reason, on stage. Before you do that talk, what you want to do is actually, even if you don't go onto social media, start posting videos of yourself on social media first to get yourself used to being seen there before you do the big talk. Do you know what I mean? But I think it's also realizing that everybody at some point is nervous about being seen. We are not on our own. Everybody is, and just knowing that in yourself can, set you free quite a lot, because again, it comes back to that thing of realizing that you're not actually on your own and we are all very similar.
It's that link, isn't it? Confidence
Yeah.
and competence.
Yes.
It's that bridge. It's so tough because in order to be confident, then you've got to be competent. But then to get the
Yes.
competence, you're going to have to step out your comfort zone. You're going to have to do it. But the key, I think, is to not get overwhelmed, to take those baby steps, like you said, and just build up that belief. And then when you start getting those bits of evidence that you are actually competent, then the confidence grows, and then they come hand in hand.
That's correct, Lou. 100%, definitely. Definitely, it is. It requires action, really. Because, I mean, even when I go back to, doing the timeline therapy on myself, for public speaking and, and using the NLP techniques. Now, don't get me wrong, they took a hell of a lot of the emotional charge out, because mine was very much a phobia. It was a phobic reaction to public speaking, and being seen. So I needed to take some of that emotional charge out first of all. But my heart still raced. And do you know what now? Even when I speak now, my heart still races on a Zoom call if there's quite a few people in there before I speak. But I'm just okay with that now, because it's like, it's not always a bad thing. I think it's reframing it. When you're getting over the fear of being seen and your heart races, it's because you care. You care about what you're going to say. You care about how you're going to show up, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's a
It's
good
not
thing.
always a bad thing. Yeah, this
Yeah,
is it.
yeah, it's reframing it as a good thing as well. It
Yeah,
might feel like a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing.
of course.
So if you could go back, Mark, and talk to your younger self, maybe that kid that felt different and alone, what would you say?
The first thing I would do if I could go back and speak to the young version of Mark is I would put my arms around him straight away, and I would give him a massive hug. And I would say, do you know what, sweetheart? You are different, but the fact that you're different makes you the person that you are. And I would just let him know that, it's okay to be himself, and to, not spend so many years trying to be somebody else, because it's not the characters he's created throughout his life that people like. It's the real Mark. it's the real Mark underneath, you know? It's the real Mark underneath. Also, I would tell him to keep away from nightclubs. But then, you know, let's face it, no, I wouldn't tell him to keep away from nightclubs because, you know what? I actually do want to go out raving again sober, and I will do it
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
Because I still like the music.
Yeah, there's quite a few of these sober raves, sober dance events
Yeah.
that are starting early and then they're finishing early as well, aren't they? Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen there's a couple. Yeah, no, I have, Luke, and I really want to do that. So I'd say to the younger version of Mark, I'd say stick to the sober raves. You know what I mean? And I'd say to him as well, I'd say, look, you know, I just need to let you know, Mark, that you know you've got this you know you've got this illness, you know, that's with you, that you know you can't say no, you know, so just don't do it in the first place anyway, you know. And that's what I would say to him. But at the same time, you know, the things that we go through in life, you know, it's not all, you know, and another thing is realizing part of addiction that it's not all about us, is
Yeah.
it really? You know, it's not all about us, because addiction can make us sort of self-centered and it be about all about us. And I think, you know, going through the things that I have gone through, you know, with addiction, if I hadn't have gone through those, I wouldn't be able to, you know, to share my story. And sharing our stories, and you've shared yours, Luke, you know, your followers on here will know, you know, about your story. We've probably helped so many people by sharing our story. And if we hadn't gone through what we've gone through, we wouldn't be able to help people, would we? You know, we
Exactly.
wouldn't be sat where we are now. So would I tell younger Mark not to go through all of that? I don't know. You know, I'd tell him to be careful. I'd tell him to be careful.
Yeah.
A
It's a
bit
tough
more
one.
careful.
It's
It
it's a
is,
tough one
isn't
because
it?
people say, don't they, you know, do you regret X, Y, and Z? And you've got to say, well, if I didn't go through all that, then I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be able to give back and I wouldn't have been able to help and I wouldn't be able to give advice on this, that, and the other. So it's a tough one, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Are there any favorite books or podcasts that you recommend, Mark, for my listeners?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO.
Yeah, I
I
love it.
am.
Bloody
I
love it.
really am. Just the diversity of, you know, of different topics. You know, I am. I really like that. I'm going to look forward to listening to quite a few of yours, Luke, as your podcast continues to grow, of course.
Brilliant.
And when it comes to books, so there's two books that I've really, really enjoyed. And, you know, I'm one of those, you know, I know a lot of us are as well, you know, the amount of books that we've got half finished. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you
I've
go,
got a few of
you
them.
almost look at them and you feel, God, I feel so sorry for those poor books down there. Are they ever going to get finished? Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
You've
Like,
always got
maybe,
three by your bed. Yeah.
yeah, maybe one day. But there's two books that the first one, Rhonda Byron, The Secret. Okay. You know, a lot of people have heard of The Secret. Yeah. Okay. I didn't mind it. But book that I liked by Rhonda Byron it's called The Magic, and
Yeah.
it's 30 days of gratitude exercises. And you do each exercise daily. And I've gone back to that 2 to 3 times, and by the time you finish the 30 days of gratitude, you're literally beaming with gratitude and the difference in how you feel on a regular basis. I really recommend that. Another one that goes back to something we mentioned about before, Luke, about responding rather than reacting. Mel Robbins'
Mm.
Let Them Theory.
Yeah, it's just an amazing book. Yeah, I heard her on a podcast the other day. I think it was on Purpose with Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sold like 8 million copies now or something, but it's an amazing book, and it really is. She is amazing.
For such a simple, you know, theory, which is literally just let them, you know, if let people be how they are. Stop trying to fix people, you know, stop trying to constantly fix people, stop trying to control the way that, you know, that people's reactions and everything. And just let them, and control the only thing that we can, which is our reaction, or the way we respond, and the way that we think, because we can't control outside circumstances all the time. And it's just before I read the book, I thought, oh my God, is that all the book's about? Seriously, how is all that going to be, that's such a small thing going to be fitted into a big book? But it just makes sense, doesn't it? When you read it and you just get so many different examples of areas of your life that you can actually apply it to as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed that book as well, Luke.
Brilliant. Okay, Mark, thank you. The most overrated self-care practice, would you say? No, sorry, underrated.
Yeah. I was thinking to myself, then overrated. The most
Underrated.
underrated self-care practice, which
Yeah, we've
I
spoke about a few today, haven't we? But what would you recommend?
we have, which this one I haven't mentioned, yeah. But this one, when I think about it, helped me a lot because when I first moved over here, I had counselling for a year, and my counsellor was a coach, counsellor, and NLP practitioner as well at the same time, which was great. Like it was. But one of the things that she taught me that helped me the most, and I recommend this to anybody who's got low self-image, low self-worth, and it's called mirror work.
Okay.
And she set me the task of every day. And she said, it is going to feel awkward at first, Mark, when you first do it. But she said, you're on your own. Nobody's there to judge you. She said, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror in the morning. And I want you to spend a few minutes talking to yourself nicely. We're so used to putting ourselves down and going, oh, you've done this again. Like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Looking at myself in the mirror and going, do you know what? I accept you for the person that you are. I'm proud of you and I love you for the person that you are. Not in an egotistical way, but in a way to say, I love you. I accept you. You're worthy. You've got this. And I will spend, when I do it, I don't do it anymore as part of my morning routine, but it did help me a lot. Is to I'll have 5 minutes and I'll just talk to myself like I'm talking to a friend. Because the most important thing is the only person in this world that is guaranteed to be with you until the day that you die is yourself. So why not make friends with that person? Why spend the rest of your life putting that person down?
It goes
Because
back
they're
to
the
that
only person that's
self-talk.
gonna be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mel Robbins talks about this, doesn't she? She high fives herself in the mirror every morning.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
right. It
it
honestly is
is.
so powerful, and it helps in so many ways because when I went for that, all that year of counseling, the big thing with me is I didn't trust anybody around me or myself because I had no relationship with me,
Yeah.
you know? Because
Yeah.
I'd used drugs for so long that,
That
I
was your
didn't know
friend.
who I was.
That
I
was your
had
crutch.
to learn who I was.
Yeah, it's great stuff, Mark. I always say to clients all the time, you would never speak to your best friend like this, but you speak to yourself. We put ourselves down all the time. Self-love, discipline and self-love is so, so important. If we can build these habits into our everyday routine,
Yeah,
things can change really quick.
of course.
Definitely. So, Mark, where can people find you? And what does the next chapter look like for you? I'll put all your stuff in the show notes anyway.
Yeah. So people can find me on Facebook. So that's probably the best place to find me. And, it's just literally Mark Adam Snell on Facebook. You can find me on there. I share, as Luke will know, I share a variety of things. I like to have a laugh and a giggle, so I do share quite a lot of, sometimes it's just a video of me dancing around in the kitchen at 7 o'clock in the morning, the
Yeah, I
joys of
remember that one.
recovery. One of the joys of recovery, we get our natural energy levels and our vibe back. And yeah, lots of different things. And I do share, I do card read. I do like, I'll pick a card in the morning as well and do like a collective card because I'm really into like oracle cards. The next part for me, so what it's going to look like for me is I'm looking forward that now I've taken away the distractions. And when I say distractions, what I mean by that is, not being in active addiction anymore and being able to focus. I've already created my NLP practitioner and NLP master practitioner courses. They are already done. I mean, there's some final touches to do, all the techie stuff that I've been procrastinating over for months, if not years. That needs to be done this year. So they will be launched. So I'll have my own courses there. And then I am going to be launching sort of like Reiki again, in my local area for me to do. And then, I don't know what it's going to look like after that, because one big learning lesson for me is to not get overwhelmed, because last year and the year before, I took on so much. I was writing my courses. I was working overtime in my job. I was doing everything. I'd become addicted to working, because that's another way that the disease shows up for me. It's not just with drugs, it's becoming addicted to working and not giving myself time out. So what I'm doing this year is taking one thing at a time, one small step at a time. Focusing on going into my new job on the 26th of January. And then after that, I'll probably launch the Reiki, and put some flyers out there in my local area. And then later on in the year, I'll launch the courses that I've already created. So that's all I'm focusing on for this year, and one thing at a time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
one of the big things you said there, Mark, about being productive when you let go of all these different substances, it's mad how much you realize it was this the amount of energy that it took from you when
Yeah.
you when you weren't drinking, when you weren't using, you were thinking about it, or you were drinking and using, or you were recovering from drinking and using, and then you get so much time and clarity back. Then you can be so much more productive. But you need to be careful because, like you said, the addiction can move, and then you could end up getting too much into work, becoming a workaholic. Because you were probably a
Yeah.
workaholic before anyway, but you were just juggling all these different things. But you do get so
Yeah.
much more time back, don't you?
You get so much more time back, Luke. A lot more time back, and it is freeing. But you're very right in what you've said there as well. And I think a big trigger for me, I know before in the past, is that when I get massively overwhelmed, what am I going to want to turn to?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why moving
That vicious
forward
circle.
now. It is. That's why moving forward now, it's about keeping the stress low, keeping the nervous system regulated, and for me, as I said, doing the one thing at a time and keeping that in check. So it's right, definitely.
Okay, Mark, thank you so much for coming on the next chapter today and just being so honest about your journey, mate. It's been great reconnecting with you.
Yes, brilliant. It's been great to chat to you, Luke. Thank you for having me on the on the podcast, and I look forward to seeing the success of the podcast as it grows.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on today, Mark. I really
Welcome.
appreciate it. Take care, buddy.